The Thanksgiving story you know is a lie. Forget the happy pilgrims and friendly natives sharing a bountiful feast. The real story is darker, more desperate, and ultimately, far more profound. It's not a story of friendship, but of survival against impossible odds. A story of starvation, disease, and the terrifying reality of starting a new life in a world that wants you dead. And hidden within this grim tale is the true, forgotten meaning of gratitude. Welcome to History Beyond Time. Today, we're peeling back the layers of myth to uncover the raw, human experience at the heart of the first Thanksgiving. To understand what that day in 1621 truly meant, we have to go back to the beginning, to the brutal winter of 1620. Imagine stepping off a cramped, disease-ridden ship, the Mayflower, after 2 months at sea. You've landed in a place you know nothing about. It's late November. The wind whips across the barren coast, chilling you to the bone. You have no home, dwindling food supplies, and the land is completely alien. This wasn't the promised land. It was a frozen wilderness. For the 102 passengers who arrived at what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts, their first priority wasn't building a new society. It was simply staying alive. They spent that first winter living aboard the Mayflower, anchored in the harbor. Sickness swept through the ship. Scurvy, pneumonia, and tuberculosis ran rampant in the cold, cramped quarters. Every day, more people died. At the peak of the suffering, 2 or 3 souls perished each day. By the end of that first winter, only half of the original pilgrims and crew were still alive. Think about that for a moment. Half. Imagine watching your friends, your family, your children waste away from hunger and disease. Imagine burying them in the frozen ground, often in unmarked graves at night, so the native tribes watching from the woods wouldn't know how weak and few your numbers had become. This was the reality. It was a constant, grueling struggle for survival. There was no glory, only grief and fear. The air was filled not with hopeful hymns, but with the sounds of coughing and the quiet despair of starvation. This is the foundation upon which Thanksgiving was built, not abundance, but devastating loss. When spring finally arrived in 1621, the few survivors, weak and emaciated, moved ashore to build their rudimentary settlement. They were sailors and city folk, not farmers. They didn't know the soil, the climate, or how to cultivate the native crops. Their attempts at planting English grains failed miserably in the New England soil. Starvation was still a constant, looming threat. They were on the brink of complete annihilation. And this is where the story takes a critical turn. Just when all hope seemed lost, a figure walked out of the forest and into their lives. His name was Samoset, an Abenaki leader who stunned the pilgrims by greeting them in broken English, which he'd learned from earlier fishermen and explorers. He later returned with another man, Tisquantum, better known as Squanto. Squanto's story is a tragedy in itself. A member of the Patuxet tribe, he had been kidnapped by an English explorer years earlier, sold into slavery in Spain, and eventually made his way to London and back to America. But when he finally returned to his homeland, he found his entire village, his entire tribe, had been wiped out by a plague, likely brought by European traders. He was the last of his people. Imagine his pain, his utter loneliness. Yet, faced with the very people who represented the source of his suffering, Squanto chose not to seek revenge. Instead, he chose to help. He had lost everyone, and here was a group of strangers, also on the brink of being lost forever. Perhaps he saw in their desperation a reflection of his own solitude. Squanto taught the pilgrims how to survive in this new world. He showed them how to cultivate corn, a crop they had never seen, planting it with fish for fertilizer. He taught them where to fish, how to hunt, and which local plants were edible and which were poisonous. He acted as their interpreter and diplomat, helping to forge a crucial alliance with the local Wampanoag tribe, led by Massasoit. Without Squanto, without the Wampanoag, the Plymouth Colony would have simply vanished. It's not an exaggeration. They would have all died. And so, we arrive at the autumn of 1621. Thanks to Squanto's guidance and the Wampanoag's help, the Pilgrims had a successful harvest. For the first time since they had arrived, they had enough food to last the coming winter. They had a surplus. They had security. To celebrate this turn of fortune, Governor William Bradford declared a festival of thanks. This was the event we now call the First Thanksgiving. About 90 Wampanoag men, including Massasoit, joined the 50 or so surviving pilgrims for a 3-day feast. It wasn't a formal invitation. The historical record suggests the Wampanoag heard the celebratory gunfire and came to investigate, perhaps thinking the colony was under attack. When they saw it was a harvest celebration, they joined in, contributing 5 deer to the meal. Now, let's be very clear. This was not the beginning of a beautiful, integrated society. It was a temporary alliance, a moment of mutual convenience and shared relief. The relationship between the colonists and the Native Americans would sour dramatically in the years to come, leading to conflict, war, and displacement. The peaceful image of the first Thanksgiving is an outlier, not the norm. But that doesn't diminish what happened on that day. For a brief, fleeting moment, 2 vastly different cultures, one that had lost nearly everything and another that had lost half its people, sat down together. They weren't celebrating friendship. They were celebrating a much more fundamental, raw emotion, the simple, overwhelming relief of having survived. This is the philosophical core of Thanksgiving that we've lost. The gratitude of the Pilgrims wasn't a polite, abstract thankfulness for general blessings. It was a visceral, gut-level reaction to having stared death in the face and, against all odds, lived. It was the gratitude of a starving man for a piece of bread. It was the gratitude of knowing you will not freeze to death this winter. It was a thankfulness born directly from immense suffering. You cannot truly understand their gratitude without understanding their desperation. Today, for many of us, gratitude is a passive feeling. We're thankful for our jobs, our homes, our families. But the gratitude of 1621 was active. It was a roaring fire in the soul, fueled by the memory of a brutal winter and the constant presence of death. It was the feeling of being pulled back from the edge of a cliff. And what about the gratitude of the Wampanoag? For them, it was more complex. They were likely being strategic, forming an alliance with the newcomers against rival tribes. But they also shared their knowledge, their food, and their land. They showed a form of grace to a group of desperate strangers. The twist, the unexpected angle in this story, is that real, powerful gratitude doesn't come from abundance. It comes from scarcity. It's born in the space between what we have lost and what we have managed to hold on to. The Pilgrims were grateful not because they had a lot, but because they had come so close to having nothing at all. They feasted because they knew what it was to starve. This is the lesson that has been buried under centuries of Hallmark cards and cartoon turkeys. We've sanitized the story, turning a tale of harrowing survival into a cozy fable. In doing so, we've stripped it of its power. The real story of Thanksgiving is a reminder that life is fragile, that survival is not guaranteed, and that the most profound gratitude arises not from the easy times, but from the moments when we overcome the greatest hardship. So as you think about Thanksgiving, I want you to look past the myths. Think of the cold, the hunger, and the fear. Think of the 50% who didn't make it. And then, think of that harvest. Think of the overwhelming, tearful relief of knowing you will live another season. That is the true spirit of Thanksgiving. It's a testament to human resilience and a celebration of survival, born from the darkest of times. It forces us to ask ourselves, what does gratitude really mean to us today? Do we feel it with the same intensity? Or have we become so comfortable that we've forgotten the feeling of true, desperate thankfulness? The story of 1621 isn't just history. It's a mirror, asking us to look at our own lives and find the gratitude that is born not from plenty, but from the simple, miraculous fact of our own survival. What does this true, raw version of Thanksgiving mean to you? Does it change how you see the holiday? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is the kind of history we explore here, the human stories behind the dates and names. If you found this journey meaningful, please subscribe to History Beyond Time and join us as we uncover more truths hidden in the past. Thanks for watching.